Throne, the Honourable Member for Airdrie.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's my pleasure to rise today in response to the speech from the throne. And like many of my colleagues here, I was disappointed. I was really disappointed by the agenda that this government laid out on Tuesday. At a time when Albertans are looking for hope, the government promises nothing but more of the same. More risky policies that will hurt Albertans. They're hurting. There's more emphasis on ideology and a continued lack of practical, common sense solutions. More of the government's picking winners and losers, and more reasons for Albertans to fear that the government does not in fact have their back at all. Albertans are worried, and it's no wonder. The Conference Board of Canada is forecasting that every other province in Canada will grow their economy this year, while ours will shrink for the second year in a row. We haven't seen an economy like this since the 1980s, and it shows. The Conference Board is also reporting that consumer confidence has hit a new low here just in February. Our province is hurting, and while good governments recognize that in times of economic distress, it must do no further harm. This government can't seem to help itself. It claims it won't make things worse. But the agenda it has set certainly doesn't provide a roadmap for making things better. The looming threat of this economy is its effect on Alberta jobs. Since the NDP government was elected, 80,000 jobs have been lost. 80,000 people, Albertans. 26,000 of them are just in January here this year alone. This government shirks responsibility for their part in this job hemorrhage and lays everything at the feet of low oil prices. And today we heard new messaging with low coal prices. Well, of course, nobody blames the government for these low prices, but its response to those prices, its ideological policies and risky economic experiments is indeed making the situation worse. The NDP climate policies, especially their $3 billion tax grab, is pushing investors away from our province. We have evidenced this from recently as this week when TransCanada announced it would cancel its contracts with 3 Alberta power plants. As a result, over 250 people will lose their jobs. In the community of Hannah, who face uncertain futures, the community will be devastated. This government has broken their trust and destroyed their job security. And in terms of electricity costs, the Honourable Minister of Energy assured us that the impact of these cancelled contracts would be minimal. But today we heard from the former head of Alberta's electricity balancing pool that it could cost Alberta consumers an extra $500 million a year. I say this loudly so you might hear it. And TransCanada isn't the only one on the run from Alberta. As my colleague from Battle River, Wainwright, raised in this House earlier today, over 20% of the town of Forestburg faces the same uncertain future because ENMAX has refused to renew the Battle River Power Station's contract. Why? Because of the NDP job-killing carbon tax. The cost to Albertans of the NDP government is clearly skyrocketing. These companies are being driven away as a direct result of the government's policies, and these jobs are at risk as a direct result of the risky ideological agenda. And it's not just towns like Hannah and Forestburg that would be punished by this agenda. Families in my own riding of Airdrie, right across this province, will feel the pain, and not just in higher electricity costs, because this tax won't only kill jobs, it will raise the price of consumer goods and cost a typical Alberta family an extra $1,000 a year. This is before your additional power costs are factored in. And this is at a time when people can least afford it, when tens of thousands of people are out of work. Shameful. This government's approach to this jobs crisis that it is helping to create has only given Albertans more reason for concern. And what's most shocking is that despite the fact that this jobs crisis is older than this 10-month-old government, they still haven't done a single thing to help Albertans. Not a single thing. It'd be fired. Its failed job subsidy program has created 0 jobs. Not only that, but the government made a mistake even creating this program. With its $178 million price tag, it's just an example of government waste and ineffectiveness. The Wild Rose is listening to businesses. We've been talking to businesses right across this province. Businesses don't want the NDP's failed subsidy program. They want better business conditions. Alberta currently has the most expensive business tax in Western Canada. This is a very simple Google search for you. Very easy. We also have the lowest investor confidence right now. The Wild Rose proposal to lower the small business tax rate from 3% down to 2% would not only create a better climate for business investment, job creation, but it would send a message that this government is not the enemy of job creators, like you are now. But this government won't listen to common sense. Instead, they are being driven by their ideology and refusing to present viable solutions to Albertans. This government would have us believe it is fighting for job creation with the first bill it introduced in this House. This bill is so vague. Proposes no concrete solutions, no specific programs, and no real path to job creation. In fact, it is a glorified 3-page mandate letter telling the minister to do his existing job. This is an insult to the tens, thousands of Albertans that are out of work right now. And what's worse is that this minister has to tell us to wait 5 more weeks for any details because his government still can't put a budget together on time. Albertans are anxious and they're frustrated, and this bill does nothing to reassure them. The government had a real chance to act in good faith for Albertans with this first bill of the session. A chance to regain some broken trust. Instead, it did make things worse by choosing their ideology over sound policy. The Wild Rose is ready to provide strong, common sense leadership that stands up for Alberta. We are ready to stand in the gap left by this government's failure to put forward a real plan with a real solution for job crisis situation. In the coming weeks, the Wild Rose will release a plan that does propose solutions. Excuse me. Solutions such as reducing small business taxes, getting out of work Albertans' skills upgrades, and giving some reasons for our energy sector to regain the confidence that the government is their partner, not their foe. Specific solutions that will focus on helping Albertans get back to work. The other thing Bill 1 intends to do is promote an economic diversification. Without any details, this doesn't give anybody any confidence, since usually this means the government picking certain industries or businesses and gambling on them to be the next big thing. Governments who try this almost always fail, and we've seen it in this province before. Not only are the taxpayers left with the boondoggle, but the rest of the economy is discouraged because there's not a level playing field. Government shouldn't be in the business of picking the economy's winners and losers. The loser almost always ends up being the taxpayer. So what about fighting for the economy we have already, instead of trying to roll a boulder up the hill? This government talks about improving market access at home and abroad, but actions speak louder than words. To date, this government has done nothing but act against the interests of our most important sector. Despite the Premier's claims she wants pipelines, she's refused to support key projects like Northern Gateway Pipeline. Northern Gateway is currently being strangled by the federal government's plan to impose a tanker ban on BC's North Coast, a ban that will kill almost 1,500 jobs and the billions of dollars of revenue the pipeline could have created for Alberta. What has the government done to stand up for these jobs? It has said and done nothing but oppose the tanker ban. Nothing to oppose. Not only that, but when the BC government opposed the Trans Mountain expansion, this premier shrugged it off. And throughout the recent escalations in energy struggle, the premier seemed more interested in defending Quebec's decision than she did in standing up for Alberta. Energy East is a no-brainer for those who have eyes to see. Right now, Eastern Canada exports 86% of its oil from foreign countries. More than 10% of Quebec's oil comes from Saudi Arabia, and more than 5% of it comes from Nigeria. These are repressive regimes, and no more climate-friendly than you would think they were. But how is the NDP government making the case for Alberta pipelines? It tried to secure the social license by announcing it will saddle our energy industry with a carbon tax that severely damages its competitiveness. But continuing opposition in BC and Quebec shows that that bid has clearly failed. Now, the government is trying to convince Albertans that lip service to pipelines is enough. But we recently saw the Premier's real agenda last month when she secretly participated in a $10,000 a plate fundraising event for an extreme anti-pipeline party. Cousins, I think. And instead of lobbying the federal government forcefully to kill the tanker ban and approve pipelines, she prefers to save her strengths asking the feds for handouts and to focus her government on preparing to diversify the economy by picking winners and losers. Well, I would note that Alberta's economy is more diversified today than it has ever been. Here's a history lesson. Pay attention. In 1985, the energy sector made up 36.1% of Alberta's $66.8 billion GDP. By 2013, it made up only 24.6% of our $331.9 billion GDP. And this diversity in our economy can be seen in other areas such as agriculture, to which this government's agenda barely gives a passing nod. After losing the trust of thousands of Albertans over the Bill 6 fiasco, this is unacceptable. It reveals just another area where the NDP government has failed to put forward a clear plan. Agriculture has been a way of life for many Albertans for over 100 years, and it's currently sparing much of southern Albertan from feeling the pain of the economic downturn. And yet, the farming and ranching families that have helped build our province are still receiving only begrudging concessions from this NDP government. In fact, after we pushed this government relentlessly to amend its ill-conceived Bill 6, it is still trying to escape accountability to farmers by making consultation meetings extremely difficult to attend. It has scheduled these consultations right in the middle of one of the busiest seasons for farmers. The months of April and May are calving and planting months, when farmers work around the clock to invest in their livelihood for the year. Hardly an appropriate time to call them away from that important work. Hardly a good way to regain Albertans' trust. This is not a good start to this session, and the NDP of past years would have recognized that. When he was in opposition, the honourable member for Edmonton, Highlands, Norwood criticized the previous government for putting forward a throne speech that, and I quote, would fail ordinary Albertans because it had no economic focus, no plan for real job creation. Well, things have come full circle. This NDP government's first basic throne speech makes the same mistakes it once despised in the previous government. Furthermore, this speech sends a message to Albertans that the NDP government would rather stick its hand out to the federal government than do the actual work of producing solutions to Albertans. I don't need to tell the House this, that Albertans are proud. Albertans are fiercely independent. But I will point out that yesterday's speech showed Albertans just how much this government betrays their deeply held values. Refuses to stand up for Albertans. But have no fear, Wild Rose is here. We will stand up for all Albertans. We are here. Thank you.